I've done flat top sort of style rings before. I've done them by showing how we hammer them and how we form them as well. This is going to be a different approach to that exact type of design. This is plate construction. It's one of the faster fading parts of our trade, and therefore I try and keep it alive by every now and then showcasing when we do this kind of work. Putting plates together and getting good solid solders and joints is a tricky thing to do. You've got to be absolutely accurate, otherwise your work where you've connected it will show. My name is Jaco. There behind the camera is Damia. We tell you all about the work that comes through our workshop, so to share with the world our techniques. So every now and then a customer comes to me and they say that they can't really envision what I'm going to be doing. I carve a wax model to show them what the ring's size is, actual dimensions are going to do on the hand. This is the point where you can change those dimensions, and it helps me as a goldsmith as well, because I can really sort of measure off this item that I know that the customer's given a go-ahead on. We're going to put a ruby inside of this one. Odd shape. It's a very old stone, but a beautiful ruby. And it had a certain depth as well, so we had to consider the height of the stone and this particular design to make sure that the design works with the stone. Because I have this exact ring I can work off right now, I can now take the measurements, for instance, of exactly how big the table on the top is. I'm using a block of platinum or a bar of platinum, and I'm preparing that. I only need to roll this out to about 1 millimeter to 1.2 mm to make sure that I'm going to get a really sturdy ring. I've decided to make the top part separate to the bottom. I'm working on the top section and the part that bends down before it meets the shank. Basically half the ring. I'm creating half the ring. So before I bend those 3 parts into shape, meaning that I've got a flat top and 2 shoulders on the side of the ring, before I do that, I'm taking a ruler to create the taper. The flat top part I'm going to leave alone, but from these 2 edges that I've created, from the flat top down towards where they're going to be bending down, I've got to have some sort of a taper. The ring from the side profile has got a taper towards the bottom. It's for comfort, and I'm going to add those in before I bend the ring. Now it's time to bend the metal. I'm taking my saw and I'm cutting lines straight over these marked lines, which, remember, I'm working with angles the whole time, so I'm making sure that those angles are as straight as possible. Remember what I said in the beginning, these lines have got to be absolutely accurate. I'm creating those lines that I've now marked so that I can bend those 2 sides down, and I'm doing that by cutting the one side, giving it a bend so it closes, and then cutting it again, bending it again, cutting it again, bending it again. When it gets down to the angles that I'm looking for, I fuse it together so that I know that I've got a permanent structure now. Essentially the outside of the ring, I've got the 2 parts coming down and they're bending ever so slightly down to create the ring shape, because it's not an angular thing, it's a ring. And so I have an item that I can now place down on top of a flat plate as a stencil. I'm tracing the insides with a sharp tool, so that when I remove the stencil, essentially I know that if I stick right outside those little marks that I've created, I should be able to take that little offcut and insert it. So when I've cut my little puzzle piece and I bring them together, I fuse those together as well. I know the size I'm looking for, and I know that this inside diameter of this particular thing is exactly what I measured on the customer. So I can take that and make that my stencil. It will tell me what the height is going to be. I can erase that and redo it until I get the right shape. The section that I'm going to be cutting out now is going to be the right size for the customer's finger, or slightly smaller, which is good because I can give it a little bit extra filing in the afterwards. But it creates the little half circle, and before I put the next plate on, I'm going to be cutting all of this out. So essentially I've got a plate, I've got another plate, and now I've got a groove on the size of the finger which I'm cutting out. Why do I cut it out beforehand? It gives me all the access to do the next plate. It's already attached because I fused it, but now I'm going to turn it around and bring in my platinum hard solder. So I'm addressing the back part, the inside of that ring. I'm going to address with solder to make sure it's as solid as it can get. So the ruby is a very interesting shape. So it's not perfectly symmetrical. This ring is quite symmetrical, which almost emphasizes the shape that's a little odd. I'm putting the stone on top. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the top section. Now keep in mind I've already cut both sides out. Now I'm not going to explain that again, but I've done the same with the second plate as well as I've done with the first plate. I'm at that stage now. So I want to open up the section in the top now, which I'm not going to be using. I'm not going to do the final cut of what I'm looking for, but placing the stone down at the top and tracing it gives me a basic idea of how far it's going to be lying into the actual flat top. I take it about 1 millimeter inwards and I start cutting out the section. Again, why am I cutting out the section? Because the next step I'm going to be doing is bringing in the inside sleeve. So the sleeve sits on the finger, place that whole cap on top of the ring that we've created, which we know will fit the finger size. I'm cleaning it up. I'm cleaning it up because I'm now going to be bringing the second part of the ring, which I'm going to have a hefty platinum band, which I'm going to be bringing together to create one ring. I'm separately making a ring that will match this one exactly. So I have my top section that comes down to a certain point now, and I want to meet up with the bottom section. Here's the main thing to remember. Where these rings meet, it needs to be the same width or slightly bigger and the same thickness, of course. The closer you get to the actual goal, the less working off you've got. So that's what we're going for. I'm bringing the two parts together. I'm making this section quite heavy. I don't have to taper it yet. I have to follow the taper that's happening over here. So long as I join it up with where that taper is at that present point in time, I will then create the taper afterwards. But these two rings, flatten them both by either filing or starting to file them and then turning them around and moving them on sandpaper until the surfaces are absolutely flat. And that's what we're looking for, because the more contact we have, the better the joint is. You can simply take that ring, put it over the ring stick as it is in two parts. And if it's too big, you'll see gaps. Just carry on with the same process until it gets to the point where those two meet up perfectly flush and you're on the size that you want to be at. And once I've fused them together, I can then shape the bottom section, which is still straight. I can then shape to follow this basic movement that I'm trying to achieve from the top down to the bottom. Now, if I made this ring solid, this is another thing. It would have been, honestly, it would have been, in my head, far too heavy. You know, you can go right up to 30 grams, even if it's a small pinky ring on platinum. It's a heavy, dense material. By building it the way that I've built it with plate construction, alleviates that weight, but not to save money, but to make it more practical in my books. There was a reason why I did it this way, and I'm quite happy the way it turned out. It's refreshing to do something like this every now and then, because it is such a basic shape of a ring, but it's different ways to achieve that shape. Thank you for watching this video. This is our opinion. This is what happened in this time around. When you click on another video later on, we might change the entire method. Until next time, look out for our next video by clicking the bell icon. I'm gonna go home now. I'm gonna find my bike. It's somewhere parked in the dock. It's late, and I've got to go home. Got to go eat. I'm human.